All right, so I'm Tom Koch. I'm with Sensata Insights, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about how you can measure driver safety and without actually thinking about a driver-facing camera. So the concept might be a little new to you, but if you saw this morning's keynote, it was really great how Geotab presented today the Safety Center and how they're going to use ADAS events and AI events into measuring driver behavior. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time. We'll talk about driver safety and then ways to measure driver safety, video content, how video actually creates context or contextualizes what you might not otherwise see with a tracking device, a Go9, which would be underneath the dash. Doesn't have eyes, but a camera adds that context. We'll talk about the difference between safety and driver behavior and how you can actually look at and consider driving behavior without even looking at the driver. And then some operation. We'll talk about some of the challenges that fleet operators have. And then obviously we'll hopefully have some time for questions and move on. So the National Transportation Highway Association, Safety Association agency told us in 2022 there were almost 43,000 fatalities on the U.S. roads that were all associated with various types of fleet operations and fleets. And so obviously when you think about things like that and the nuclear verdicts where you've got all these litigation situations, safety is front of mind in fleet operators because the risk is enormous. And so how do I, as a fleet operator, start to look at bringing safer functionality, safer operations to my fleet? And then obviously there are benefits that can translate into insurance and things of that nature, but almost 43,000 fatalities. So when you look at ways fleet operators measure safety today, you think about it in three basic ways. It's standard telematics, which you can see from a Go9. You're going to get speed and harsh braking and acceleration and turning and things of that nature. But then think about driver behavior and think about driving behavior. So two key differences, driver and driving. And driving behavior is the way the driver operates the vehicle. And driver behavior is what's the driver doing inside the vehicle, because you could construe distraction as being a problem, but maybe not. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about what I mean by each of those things. So adding video adds it contextualizes what's happening in the fleet. So you can see road conditions, you can see what weather it was. I think it was mentioned this morning that, the sun, is it in the eyes of the driver while they're driving the vehicle? What are all the things that the driver is dealing with while they are operating the vehicle? You wouldn't see that from a telematics device that's mounted underneath the dashboard, tucked up under there. So you need some sort of a visualization to see actually what's happening. But you get a lot more out of that when you think about what does the camera see if you've got a camera system that has the AI capability to look at things like tailgating or lane departure or distraction if you've got a camera facing the driver. So all these things factor into safety as we think about the operation of a vehicle. So again, the distractions could be eating, drinking, smoking. It could be fatigue, I'm tired, I'm yawning. It could be any number of things, but in order to do that, you have to have a camera facing inside. And with privacy laws and the concerns out there about having my face captured, and some union operators don't like cameras facing in, but they really do want to know if their vehicles are being operated safely, and you can do that with a driver-facing or the road-facing camera only, and that's measuring driving behavior. So it's a different thing. So driving behavior is really, really important in this calculation. When you take a step back and you look at those almost 48,000 fatalities, and you think about the things that represent those risk factors in the fatalities, statistically, 8% or 3,300 were associated with distraction. So again, think distraction is most likely being looked at by a camera facing the inside, all right? And then fatalities for drowsiness were less than 700, okay? Not underestimating or not trivializing the data there, but again, when you think about a safety strategy and operating a vehicle in a safe way, you don't need to have a camera looking inside because you can see a lot of the behavior characteristics for distraction just by looking at the way they operate out the front of the vehicle, okay? 28.7% of the fatalities were associated with speeding. Now that you can get from a Go9 device, okay? So that now you can actually see what's happening with basic standard telematics. But then let's think about driving behavior. So solid line lane departure. If the vehicle goes over the white line on the right-hand side and the driver chronically crosses that white line, he might be going onto a median or onto the shoulder, which is an unsafe situation. Cross the yellow line, they're going into oncoming traffic, crossing a median. You don't need to see that. That could be distraction because you might see swerving. And the key here is to start looking at patterns and some of the AI capability inside of Geotab when you can take some of that technology and those events that are triggered by the camera and then build that into driver scoring. You can pick up on trends and identify risk factors for drivers just simply by understanding what's the common behavior of that driver as a driver. They're driving differently. Do they tailgate chronically? Do they maintain a 2-second following distance when you want them as a company standard to maintain 3 seconds of separation? Again, triggering these events based upon a camera that properly can calculate that and track that and event on that, and then Geotab's ability to inbound that or take that data in and then build that into a proper scorecard. You don't need to see if the driver is paying attention or not because you can see patterns, and patterns are really what represent the greatest opportunity for us to see. And then that's coaching. Then you bring in a closed loop coaching program and you can actually coach based upon not looking at what the driver's doing. Another one that's coming is rapid lane changes. So we've all seen it. You're driving down the interstate and you've got somebody that goes by and they're doing a lot of zigging and zagging, changing lanes. That's erratic behavior, and you might have a lot of operators that do that. Taxi cabs might be doing that, Uber drivers might be doing that, but that behavior exists out there. And if you can then look at how often lane changes occurred over the course of a certain distance, again, you see patterns, and that's where you start to see a driver scorecard that really plays an important role in your ability to then have those coaching discussions and maintain a safer fleet operation. The goal here is to identify driving behavior because you'll see a lot by that. Another measure for distraction would be a camera that might be able to tell if the traffic leaves a stoplight and you don't. We've all been at a red light, your second car behind the light turns green, the guy in front of you or the lady in front of you is looking at their cell phone, they're looking down and everybody else starts moving, but you don't. That's distraction. That driver is not paying attention, the light's changed, and a camera can detect that. That's another way of getting a camera-triggered event that is distraction. And I'm not looking at me, I'm looking at the road and the way I drive as a behavior. So some unique things to look at, and when you talk to some insurance carriers that I talk to on a pretty regular basis, that's exactly what they look for. It's trends and patterns and repeated patterns. And if you can identify those repeated patterns and build them into a coaching program and then track the performance, your fleet operations will become safer, your insurance rates will be dealt with or handled, and your risk goes down. And you don't need to look at that driver to do any of that, okay? Safety operations, there are these patterns that develop, like I said, and look for that chronic behavior and that consistent trend, that pattern that happens over and over again, and then address it accordingly. Now, all this has challenges, all right? And the biggest challenges is, number one is who's the driver? And identifying who the driver is in the vehicle is really key here, because if you've got a fleet of vehicles and you might have shared drivers, you're going to need some sort of a driver ID system, a key fob. There's all kinds of registrations. Maybe you've got drivers that are assigned to specific vehicles, so then you know who the driver is. Facial recognition is something that that is out there. That is also another way to have that driver, but that's a driver-facing camera that's going to use biometrics, and depending upon where you are in the world, that may or may not be a privacy violation or a problem. So again, driver identification is really a key factor in being able to close that loop with the coaching program, so that way you can see what they've done, how they drive, and then have those proper coaching discussions, okay? In summary, I think I've reviewed a few different concepts and considerations on things that you can do using a good AI-equipped camera system inside of the Geotab environment that really can bring a safer function, a safer operation, which will make and have a direct impact on the company and the fleet operator from a better operating and a safer environment, okay? And I am done and have questions. So any open questions?
Hey, Tom. You mentioned a driver sitting at the lights and looking at his phone and everyone else taking off. Have we got that one enabled?
So in our particular camera, we do have that capability in the camera. Yeah, so it's delayed start is a feature that we have. So yeah, that is something in our particular product. Yes.
Perfect.
I'm not trying to be here on pitching my product, but just giving you conceptual ideas. But yeah, that is something that is in a camera.
Any other questions?
Yes.
You mentioned the importance of who's in the vehicle. Is there integration in place with the Geotab Drive app? So we have, our guys are logging in for hours of service, DVAR and such. Would that assign them within that platform?
Yeah, so as long as the driver is identified in the vehicle, whether it's through an ELD system or whatever, or a fob system, the key is identifying that the asset's being driven by that at that time by an individual. And if you are capturing that through an ELD program or something else, that's really the key, is getting the information into and assigning a driver to the vehicle. When you have motor pool issues or applications, that becomes a little bit, it might be easy because you're checking out keys. But again, it's the key, the biggest challenge there is just making sure you know who the driver is on that particular route at that particular day.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
Other questions?
Any other questions?
No? Well, thank you very much for stopping. Oh, John?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That was great. The other thing you mentioned that I wondered if it's available is the this lane weaving or the frequent changing of lanes. Have you got that enabled?
So that is not something that's enabled in our current deployment today. That is something that we are working on, and we've been talking with Geotab about coming up with a way to do that. We need to capture turn signal indication. So that's a CAN bus. We need to be fed that information from the Go 9. We will do that with an IOX port integration. But yeah, we need to get turn signal information in order to do that. Right now, I can absolutely trigger on solid line, and you can adjust based upon speed of the vehicle. But so solid lane departure is something that we do today. But that dashed line, it's really important that you have turn signal indication so that you know whether or not they're signaling properly. Again, that's another factor that might be driver safety as well, making sure that when you change lanes, you signal. But
One more, if I may. I don't think you mentioned rolling stop, or maybe.
yeah, so rolling stop is another one that is a good point. Yeah, so stop sign detection is something that is another way for you to identify if a driver comes to a complete stop at a stop sign or even a stop light. And that is another, again, an ADAS, looking out the front, a driving behavior way of detecting it. Again, triggering an event based on the camera that is then ingested into Geotab is, again, to bring that closed loop coaching program. Okay. Any other questions?
We have time, so speak up.
No?
Any frequently asked questions that you get, Tom?
I think I tried to address frequently asked questions in the presentation. But hey, thank you everybody for stopping by. And if you want to talk further, please stop by, grab me. We're at P5 in the Marketplace Event Center. So please stop by. Otherwise, have a great day and enjoy Connect.